you are extremely selective about who you choose to sell to and find the customer segment within the niche that is the most responsive and sell to that segment, because if you sell to that segment, you're going to be able to get all the segments to generate a faster response. And you talked about how you discovered that within the heart niche. Can we, let's talk about how to find the most responsive segment within any niche, whether it's a segment that you're familiar with, or maybe even if you've come across a market that you're not familiar with before.
Yeah, so definitely it all starts with this conceptual understanding. Who is the prospect that's the closest to the line of purchasing? There's a balancing act because you need, on one hand, you need the most motivated buyer, but on the other hand, you need a large enough quantity of those particular people to be in a niche to allow you to like build a business there or scale a particular campaign. So oftentimes you can find a prospect that is the most motivated to buy, but there's just not enough of them. So you're looking for this balancing act between the most motivated prospect in the niche that is the most motivated to buy, plus a large enough quantity of them to really build a business or scale an offer. But the conceptual idea is that the person who has the most urgent problem to be solved is usually the person that has a lot of skin in the game. So an urgent problem is essentially a problem. We've spoken about this in the past. An urgent problem is essentially a problem that is getting worse and worse and worse the longer it goes unresolved. This is definitely a line of thinking. It's not always applicable to every niche under the sun, but this is how I think about things, at least as it relates to, the mass market niches that are out there, where 80% of all the money in this business is being made. I'm looking for a person that has an urgent problem, someone whose problem is getting worse and worse and worse, and every day or every minute or every hour that goes by where that problem isn't solved, the solution is just getting worse and worse and worse. So it's not a problem that you can sit on. It's not a problem that you can coast with. I always give the example of a dripping faucet in the kitchen. Drip, 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 drip. That's a problem. It's annoying. It's frustrating. But then another problem is a burst water pipe in the basement that's flooding your basement, and all your family heirlooms that have been passed down to you through generations are in the basement. That's an urgent problem. If you don't fix that soon, all of your family heirlooms are going to be destroyed. So that's an example of a problem versus an urgent problem. So people who have urgent problems, they're far more motivated to buy. They're far less price resistant. They're far less likely to shop around. They're just looking for, an amazing solution now. So they spend more money, they buy with less resistance, they're far less likely to shop around. They're just a really, really good prospect to target. So I'm always looking for those guys. And as we spoke about in a previous episode, when you target the red hot bullseye of that market and you speak to the intensity of the problem that that particular person has, all the other people in the market, not all of the other, but a number of other segments that are in the market, segments of prospects in the market that would not have as urgent a problem, would see their own problems in somebody that has a far more urgent problem than they would, and therefore those people are more likely to buy. However, if you target a prospect in a market that does not really have an urgent problem, well, then all of the guys that have an urgent problem don't see that that's a solution for the severity of their issue, and therefore they're unlikely to buy. So I have found that if you want to capture the most quantity of sales within a particular niche, it's best for you to target the prospect with the most urgent problem, and you tend to suck in an awful lot of sales from all the other prospects. So really and truly, depending on your level of awareness in your own niche, depending on how much education, knowledge, savvy, sophistication, and ultimately just experience that you have in your niche, there's a lot of places that start down this journey from a different perspective. One of the places that I always start from, and it was taught to me by my mentor, Gary Halbert, is you need to first and foremost identify the top 3 to 5 competitors in your niche. If you don't have your top 3 to 5 competitors, if you don't know who those people are, you are really, really messing around. You've got to know who your top 3 to 5 competitors are. You've got to know everything about them. You got to buy their products, reverse engineer their advertising, buy all their upsells, go through their funnels several times, buy the upsells, buy the downsells, get on their email lists. If they try to get you on the phone, get on the phone. You need to thoroughly investigate everything they're doing, get every conceivable email, every conceivable campaign, document everything. If these are a top 3 to 5 competitor in your niche, then they're doing everything that they need to do within the niche to be a top 3 to 5 competitor. And if you want to be among that crew, well, then you really, really need to get up to speed on everything that they're doing. This is such a foundational concept for success. And it doesn't matter whether you're, a direct response business, an internet business, whether you're a lawyer or a pizza parlor, you need to understand who your top 3 to 5 competitors are. And you will learn everything that you need to know to become a top 3 to 5 competitor by studying those guys. And one of the most important things for you to study is, who are they targeting? Who is their prime prospect? Because whoever they are targeting has caused them to become a top 3 to 5 competitor. So if you can study their advertising, really break it down, reverse engineer it, if they're making a claim, well, then who is the person that would respond to that claim? What's going on in that person's life that would cause them to be interested in such a claim? You need to reverse engineer the promises they're making, the objections that they're handling, the arguments that they're presenting, all of the problems that they're talking about solving, all of the identity-based language that they are using to cause their prospect to say, this is for me. You need to break all of that down, reverse engineer it, and start building a profile and an understanding of who it is exactly that these guys are essentially targeting. And if you can do that across the top 3 to 5 competitors, and you're going to be able to compare one prospect to the next, to the next, to the next, hopefully, and most commonly what happens is there's a lot of overlap between them. There's a lot of similarities among the prospects that they are targeting. So what that exercise can do for you is monumental. It can take the unknown and bring it into the known, at least to an 80% plus accuracy of who it is that the prospect is. That is a core strategic, part of identifying who the top prospect is with the most urgent problem in your marketplace. If you don't do that, then the impact that doing that can have in your business is night and day. It is profound. When I was with Gary Halbert, he was an absolute genius. And one of the things that made him so popular and so brilliant and recognized as one of the greatest to ever do the game is his ability to get into a new niche where he had no previous experience in, he had no previous understanding, and in about 30 days, pull off a real breakthrough ad, something that just turned all advertising in that niche on its head and just outperformed everything. And he was able to kind of get to that stage within about a 30-day period from zero, from a standing start. And at least one of the keys to him being able to do that was he would literally just be able to identify the top 3 to 5 competitors and begin reverse engineering what it is that they were doing and clearly identify who their prospect was.
It's absolutely brilliant. And the first piece of this is most marketers look at their product and think about what it is that they're going to sell. Whether they have a service, they have a product, they're thinking deeply about what it is that they do. And that they think of marketing as taking what they do and broadcasting it to anyone and everyone in order to try to find a buyer for their product. Really, number one core tenet of marketing is to understand that marketing is not supply side. It is 100% demand side. And if we have an absolute terrible fentanyl drug problem in our country, and the reason we have a fentanyl problem isn't because people are bringing fentanyl from China and Mexico and Canada. It's that there is a massive demand for fentanyl. And it doesn't matter that where it's going to come from somewhere as long as there is a demand for it. And then appreciating the fact that the only reason that you have, like the reason your industry exists, the reason that your products exist is not because there's people who do that work. It's because there is demand for that work. And so we have to first appreciate that we're not supplying products. What we're doing with marketing is finding the demand, and locating the place of the most demand is really the easiest way of generating revenue. I mean, they don't give you extra credit at the bank if you work harder in order to generate a sale. So you may
Yeah.
as well work easy and go where it's easy and find the demand. The next piece of that is that there is almost always a prompt or a trigger event that causes somebody to go from oblivious, not really needing something, to all of a sudden needing a product or service. Somebody works a job and now they go off and they create a little side hustle business. Well, heck, now all of a sudden they need help preparing their tax return, because they used to be able to just file it online or through some sort of simple free system. Now all of a sudden they got a business, and so there's extra forms and extra deductions and things, and so now they need help. And so now they're in the market for tax prep, and they never were before. And understanding then, okay, well, that's a particular type of customer, right? That somebody who has had a trigger of starting a new business or side hustle now becomes, within the whole realm of small business owners, this particular type of prompt. And so if you decide that that person is who you're going to target, well, then you could create reports, you can create a webinar, you can create a promotion around, hey, you started a new side hustle, we can help you prepare your tax return and maximize your deductions. And so that you're talking to that particular segment within the entire world of small business owners. And this is absolutely pivotal to make this switch, because I talk to hundreds of people a year, and almost never am I talking to a prospective client who really is focused on their customers, has their segments laid out, understands who is which. I've always got to do that work, and I'm glad to do it, and that's one of the certain values that I bring. And this is really step one. The other piece of this is breaking down your competitors. And I really would like to do a little bit of a deep dive into this, Caleb, if you don't mind. When you say breaking down, looking at their messages, what is your approach here when you're looking at, let's say you're looking at nutritional supplements within the heart space, and there's a number of ads out there. There is the beet juice people that have the beet juice sip along. There's different supplements to take. What are you looking for? Now it's easier than ever, because you used to have to go to the bookstore and look at ads in magazines, and whereas now you can just go to Facebook ad library and just find people's ads and trace through their promos. Like, what are you looking for, and how are you breaking that down in a way that is helping you understand who the market segments are that they're talking to?
Yeah, the way I learned this was from Gary Halbert. He was a ferocious collector of ads. He was a big proponent of a swipe file, but he never knocked off an ad. He never replicated someone's ad. What he was always doing it wasn't for some moral reason. It was for a far more egotistical reason. And that was that he always understood where guys were strong and where they were weak. And he understood that a top performing offer is strong in terms of their insights and in terms of its insight and understanding of who they're speaking to. But in Gary's case, he always felt that they were weak when it came to like execution of copy and tactics and strategies. So when Gary would reverse engineer, when he would get a swipe, what he would do is he would always attempt to find out the information behind the words so that he could get that information on who the prospect is, what the hot buttons are. Then what he would do is he would then, once he downloaded that information and he found out what the top guys knew about the prospect and the hot buttons, what was working, he would go off and do his own research, and he would go much, 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 much deeper than what those guys would go. And then once from that place of just this far superior understanding of who the prospect is, what makes the prospect tick, what needs to be said to the prospect, then he would go and write completely new, unique copy that would just outperform everything else in the marketplace. And what he used to make me do, and I've taken this to a different stage just because of the modern world that we live in, but he would make me, back in the day, he would make me get on the phone and literally talk with buyers and non-buyers. And he would make me ask like 120 questions, and I would like download from these guys all of their experiences, and then I would report back. Rest assured, no other competitor does that. None, zero. Like, you're the only guy in the game that does that, if you can do that. So what I started to do over the years is, and per what you just mentioned there, Rob, which is bang on for where I'm going with this conversation, like, one of the most important things for you to understand is not just who the prospect is that has the most urgent problem, but what is their dilemma and what is the genesis that got them into this the place of urgently needing a solution to begin with. So these days, like, it's so simple and easy to build a Facebook group. So you go out, you find all of your competitors, and you reverse engineer everything that they're doing. You identify their prospects that they're targeting. You get an 80% understanding of who the buyer is. Go take that, go spend $1,000 or $2,000 building an email list on Facebook or building a Facebook group. Get a few hundred people into a Facebook group or onto an email list and get into a communication with them. I did this in the keto niche. I'm currently doing this in the spirituality niche. You can like, I started a keto group. I did this as a case study a number of years ago. I, started a keto Facebook group, put a whole bunch of exactly the prospects that I had identified that were buyers, put them into the group, started doing regular Facebook Lives, getting 100 people or so of exactly these prospects from this research from the top competitors. Started doing Facebook Lives. This Facebook Live, we're going to talk about the 10 best breakfast recipes. We're going to talk about how to overcome the keto flu. And I would get like 100 or so people onto a call. I would give them a little bit of information, give them a little value, and then I would enter into a dialogue with them. And the type of questions that I would ask is, what happened in your life that caused you to want to be on the keto diet? This was one of 120 questions that I would ask. I'm doing this in the spirituality space. I'm doing free guided meditations. And again, get 100 people onto a call, do a little guided meditation. And then after the call, what am I going to do? I'm going to ask tons and tons and tons of questions. So I get exactly the prospect from these top competitors' offers. I profile that person, spend $1,000, $2,000, put them into a Facebook group, put them onto an email list, get them onto a Zoom call, get them onto a Facebook Live, give them some value in exchange for free, in exchange for the opportunity to enter into a dialogue. In the keto space, it was very interesting. What was a commonality? So when you ask people what happened in your life recently that caused you to want to X, you're going to get the reason why. It's such an important question and it's such a profound answer, and you're going to see the answers that are going to come in, and there will be similarities. If you get 100 answers, there is going to be 20, 30 answers there that are going to be very similar in nature to one another. And that then is going to introduce you to this dilemma that these people are having. In the keto niche, the one commonality that I kept hearing from these women over and over and over and over again is, the straw that broke the camel's back is that my husband insulted me. He insulted my weight. and it just devastated me emotionally. And
Wow.
it explains why he's no longer physically interested in me. It explains why he ignores me. It explains why he doesn't listen to me anymore. And secretly behind it all, these women are realizing, oh my God, I'm alone in this relationship. He's no longer interested in me. Maybe he'll go and find someone else and I'll be left on my own. Maybe this is the beginning of a divorce. So now in her head, her urgent dilemma is, my husband thinks I'm undesirable and he's going to leave me. And if I don't fix this soon, my marriage is going to be over. So now every day that she allows that to go on in her head, the clock is ticking. Well, the relationship is on the rocks and she may lose her husband to a divorce. There's no advertising out there that is talking to that prospect on that level, because nobody has gone to the lengths needed to get into a dialogue with this particular prospect. One of the prospects, one of the urgent dilemmas that I'm identifying in the spirituality space, because most of the people in that space are women, and at least one category of urgent problem that is causing a lot of these women to be in the spirituality space is postpartum depression. They just had a baby and their life is just in absolute chaos. They're on depression medication. They're trying to dig themselves out of a hole. They're looking to yoga. They're looking to meditation. They're looking to all of these retreats and things like that to try and get them out of the hole. Not that that is the answer. At least that's one category that I'm identifying right now. But the idea here is that you identify your top 3 to 5 competitors, you get an understanding of the profile of prospect that they are targeting, take that profile, go build a little audience, an email list or a Facebook group. It's so cheap, it's so easy to do it. It'll be the best $1,000, $2,000 you'll ever spend, because what you will get from that, if you can get on these calls, if you can get into communication with these people, if you can get into a dialogue and start asking them every darn question under the sun. What got you here? What problems are you having? What's going to happen? When I teach this to students, the natural question I get back is, but won't people get frustrated that you're asking them such an intimate question? I've done this, been doing this for 20 years. Not once from anyone. And I've asked some real deep penetrating questions. I've asked some real intimate penetrating questions. And you know what? People that really have urgent problems, it's, a lot of the times they're really happy to talk about them, because perhaps you might be the only person that they can talk to about them. So I ask lots of questions. Why are you here? What, have you tried in the past? What hasn't worked for you? What has worked for you? What's going to happen if you don't solve this? Like, when you go to bed at night, what's the one thing that keeps you awake? Like all of these types of questions, what they do is they help you build this very intimate understanding of who your prospect is, so that you can speak to that person in a manner that nobody else in your niche is going to be able to speak to. So from there, the journey to identifying who is the most motivated prospect, who is the one with the most urgent problem. Like if you take the keto space, you might have the 25-year-old gym bunny who's got 1.5 pounds of ankle fat that bothers her because she's doing the Instagram pictures. Like you've got that girl versus the lady that's 100 pounds overweight who her husband just ignores her and shows her absolutely no love and affection, and all he has to say to her is nasty words about her physical appearance. Who's more likely to buy? The obvious answer presents itself to you once you do the necessary homework to get a deep understanding of who the prospect is. So you'll be able to catalog all of the various different problems that people have, and the most urgent one comes from that level of work.
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant, because a meditation app or a meditation program for postpartum depression is going to resonate a lot stronger. And there's always people having babies. So there's a
Yeah, yeah,
constant supply
yeah,
of new customers, and they're easy to get because the list of moms that have just had babies is readily available to go through a
yeah, yeah.
number of different approaches. And so this, rather than having one of 100,000 meditation programs, you can suddenly have the by finding the particular vein of demand for somebody who has a very urgent dilemma and is looking to solve it, you can have a much more successful business. And the life, and just because this is a postpartum product as a front end, doesn't mean that that's where this relationship ends.
Mhm.
Because this customer it could very well be a very, very lucrative customer on a lifetime value standpoint, but we have identified a trigger within the whole realm that enables us to really convert that person from just the great unwashed masses into being a customer. And what really impresses me is that you do this research so deeply before you go and sell a product. I learned this the opposite way. I bought a product on how to create an information marketing business back in, I don't know, 2002 or so. And then I replicated what I learned, and I started by creating the product. And there was 33 strategies in the product, and I created my 33 strategies for my market, and I created all these audios and all this stuff, and had all the binders, all the audios, everything recorded, ready to go. And then I set about creating a sales letter, and then I set about creating an ad. And I created, back then everything was, you had an ad, and the way you responded to the ad was calling a toll-free number and leaving your name and address. And so I created this and then of course it's a multi-step 28-day follow-up campaign. So I had all the steps created. It was my nephew that was working with me in the company at the time. And so my nephew was trained as leads came in. I bought ads in every magazine, spent thousands of dollars in ads, and my nephew was sending out all these sales letters, and I got one sale out of like 130 leads that I generated over the course of a month. And I was in despair. Like, what the hell? And
Yeah.
so I had an opportunity to speak with Dan Kennedy about it. And he said, all right, you got 130 leads. So what you're going to do, of course, I had name, address, phone number, we had all the contact information. He said, all right, promote a teleseminar to those leads and get them on the phone. And while you have them on the phone, teach them something for about 10 or 15 minutes about what you promoted within the sales letter. And then once you've taught that, then turn it around to them and make it an open Q&A and let them ask a question. And when they ask their question and engage, you answer that question. And then you ask them a question. What was it about this that made you want to be part of it? What about the product did you not like? That's a difficult question to ask after you've built the product, right? Because it's like, oh my gosh, they're going to tell me something. I'm going to feel rejected. And also, I did all this work, and I don't want to have to redo all this work. And so it's a lot of emotion around asking prospects about your product and why they didn't choose to buy. But within 35 minutes into that call, I had the answer, because 3 of them told me that the way I was selling into a company and they didn't have budget for information products. They typically went to seminars. And as soon as I recharacterized my product as a seminar and held it, I did it teleseminar, and then I did it live. And then it was boom, it was a success. And and it would have been nice to have learned that before I created the product, but it was nice
Yeah.
because that was handouts and bonuses. And essentially I was doing the seminar through the handouts and materials that I gave them. But nonetheless, it's a incredible breakthrough that you can generate just simply by speaking with your customers. And if this is something that is insightful, you're getting some information that's helpful to you in your business, like this episode, make sure that you subscribe to this show so that you're able to get future updates, and activate the little bell so that you'll get notified in the upper right hand corner of your YouTube whenever a new episode comes live, because you'll really appreciate the insights that you get on an ongoing basis. So Caleb, when you're talking to somebody, because I know that you have clients that you'll take every now and then, somebody who's got an email list that they think that they have monetized this email list, and they feel like they're doing really well, and then they'll bring you in and you're able to 20 or 30x the revenue out of their email list because you understand these things a little bit better. What if you're going into a business and they've got customers? How are you doing this research so that you are able to come alongside their team and write emails, write campaigns that convert so much better than anything that they've been doing, and they may have been in this niche for 5, 10, or 20 years?
Yeah, well, I mean, you definitely need to get an understanding of what's worked for them in the past. You need to really review what it is that they've been doing, and you need to get clear on where they're weak and where they're strong. A lot of the times, I only choose to get involved in niches where I thoroughly understand the prospect these days, simply because it is hard work to succeed. And I learned a long time ago, I'm a high school dropout. I never went to college. I don't have any formal qualifications in anything. But I learned from Gary. I watched Gary go to extraordinary lengths. He got into the day trading niche for a period of time, and he went to day trading school. How many people would do that? And loads of examples of him going not the extra mile, but like the extra 100 miles. And same with John Carlton, like another just brilliant, brilliant dude. Like if you ever read like any of John Carlton's bodybuilding ads, like his direct mail sales letters, like that's a set the bar experience. It's like, oh my God, like this guy, he's not a bodybuilder. Like the level of intensity that he would have put into like researching the prospect to get to that level of that depth of understanding is monumental. And
And the
so many people don't understand just like how much hard work goes into being successful. And I learned from Gary, I'll probably never be the most polished guy. I'll probably never be I'll never be the guy with the most bells and whistles. I'm probably not the smartest cat in every niche, but I can probably just outwork everyone by just brute force. You don't need a lot of intelligence. You don't need a lot of savvy. You just got to be willing to push and push and push to go to deeper, deeper levels of understanding. So I have chosen to set up shop in certain niches where I've done all of that work, and therefore I'm dialed in now. So I would not choose to get into the knitting niche as an example. It's too far out of my realm of comprehension. But if I was advising someone who wants to set up shop in a specific niche, yeah, these are the types of lengths that you need to be willing to go through in order to get to the top of your game. Because you can rest assured the level of intensity that I'm recommending you put into your niche here, you'll probably be the only one doing that level of effort. And you'll collapse the length of time it takes for you to go from zero to being a top competitor by a country mile. I don't know if that
the
answers your question there, Rob,
Well,
but
the other thing
it's
that
a
the other thing I wanted to mention on that was about going to the day trading school, because I've done that as well. Not day trading school, but it
wow.
was
Yeah,
an
yeah,
investing school. And what you do there isn't necessarily consuming the training. You can consume the training all you want, but the reason you're going to the day trading school is to talk to the other students.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so when I went, they had the little iPad with the extra screen, and one screen was the ticker of the stocks, and they were looking at this and that. And it was really pretty fascinating how some of them had these setups where they were sitting in the class taking notes, but at the same time watching the markets. And
yeah,
then there were other students who, there was a doctor who had brought his son, and the doctor was about 62, informative, and the son was about 38. And so the doctor had these assets, and he was bringing his son in because this is how the doctor had been investing his assets for the last 15 years, and now he wanted to instill this into his son. And then there was a guy that was he lived in Puerto Rico, and he had come, and he had to show us his balances within his trading accounts. And so there was this, it wasn't good enough that he was rich. He had to actually show you his balances on his phone. you're spending time in the hallway, chit-chatting with people, striking up a conversation, sitting down in the session room and talking to the person at your left and talking to the person to your right. And somebody's walking by you in an aisle. It's like, hey, how are you? This is why you're at the day trading school. If I was getting into the knitting niche, I would go to a town that has a knitting store and they have a Saturday get together. And maybe it's a class for new knitters, or maybe it's like the advanced class where they're doing something and I go and yeah, I'm going to look like a freaking idiot in that class. But I am getting to talk with them. They're going to talk with me because I'm going to stick out like a sore thumb there. And how long have you been knitting? Why do you knit? What do you get out of knitting? Is it feel to give something to somebody that you created? If somebody tied up your hands and you weren't able to knit, how would that make you feel? And really, what's exciting about knitting? What do you look forward to? And do you have a lot of knitting patterns that you've never used before? It's not like grilling the person, but over the course of the day or the class or a few different conversations, those are the types of questions that I'm asking. And just like I was able to profile the multi-screen user versus the doc and his son versus the egotistical, I was categorizing the type of prospects within
Yeah.
this niche. And within knitting, within whatever, there are types of prospects, there are personas within the niche, and getting an understanding of how those personas operate and what their push buttons are, because it's not the same. But there are personas that do have a deeper, urgent dilemma than others. And that is what you're trying to sniff out. And it's really not complicated, but it isn't easy either.
Yeah.
And now some of this I'm actually doing using AI. So
Hmm.
you can click deep research and find out what markets are saying, at least online, and you can get a little head start in creating some personas. And for a lot of niches that have a lot of conversations online, after you really figure out that everything is demand driven, not supply driven, and then number two, some segments are better response than others. Then three, who are our competitors going after? And what are the messages that they're saying in order to generate a response? And then four, let me do some research and actually talk to these folks. So I think that we absolutely outlined a fabulous approach for anybody who is trying to create some advertising that's actually going to generate a response for them.
One of the mantras that I keep in my mind and have kept in my mind for this type of stuff is, if you want a breakthrough result, you got to be willing to put in a breakthrough effort. And a lot of this stuff is not rocket science. It's not. And the other thing as well, if you just think of things from an advertising perspective, all things being equal, the advertising that makes the prospect feel like you're speaking to me more than the other is going to win. A lot of people focus on things like credibility, things like proof, things like testimonials, things like guarantees, and all that. And what I have found is that all of that stuff is necessary, but it's on a certain level. If you are able to communicate with a keto prospect and have, a very personal, intimate conversation, and you're able to convey to her how much you understand, the pain that she's going through, with her husband, and how hurt she feels by, being physically, her physical appearance being insulted by the man that she loves, and how terrified she is of, potentially losing her husband and the family being broken up. That trumps guarantees, trumps, credibility elements, it trumps testimonials, because you're able to speak to that person at such a deep level that they're hooked on a in a very, very emotional way. And that stuff, if you can get to that depth of understanding in your marketplace, that's what catapults you into the stratosphere of success. It's very few people are doing that. Very, 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 very few people are doing it.
When I had the opportunity to spend time with Dan Kennedy, it was
He
really
does it, by
one.
the way. He's brilliant. Yeah.
What that
Yeah.
was really one of the things there's two things that I thought were just I was absolutely blown away in my first meeting and seeing him work because I was in a mastermind meeting and there were me with 19 others around the table, and one, the actual value that I got from him working with me on my own business was one thing, but really more important than that was watching how he worked with the other 19 people in the room. And one of the real focuses that he had was understanding the conversation that the person has in their own brain and being able to think about, okay, what is the story this prospect is saying to themselves that is causing them to show up and want this product? And how is my story going to mingle with their story in order to create a buying decision? And whereas most people in the keto niche are thinking about blood sugar spikes and the types of food, ketosis, this is what the keto proprietor is thinking about. Well, they're totally miscommunicating with their prospect, particularly if their prospect is worried about their marriage. And understanding really the decisions that those people are making at that profound level. The other thing that I was incredibly blown away with was his systems mindset around sales. And the other thing that I was doing at that time was working with household movers. And he, so he would act like, oh, okay, so this is somebody, they send a salesperson out, they give a bid, they're handing the prospect a quote, and then they go away, and the prospect generally gets a couple of quotes and is making a sale. Okay. He understood the sales process for a household mover and how you would implement that sales process in such a way that maybe the customer didn't shop around. They made the decision right there at that moment. And so they trusted you more than they would some other stranger that they were going to quote and try to verify your price with. And then versus maybe a plumber who is coming to the house, doing the job all at that same, doing a diagnosis, giving a quote, doing the job all in the same visit. And so like the systems mindset of the sales process, I thought was also a brilliant piece. But on this point around the thinking of how the customer, what their story is absolutely brilliant. And if you like this and you want more, then you really ought to subscribe to Monetization Daily. You'll get ongoing monetization advice, strategies, tactics, and that are each designed to give you a massive breakthrough of results within your sales and marketing efforts. That's at monetizationresearch.com. Get subscribed to Monetization Daily at monetizationresearch.com. So, Caleb, this is absolutely a pivotal recipe for creating advertising that's going to generate massive results. I was looking at some notes that I had from a conversation that you and I had in 2017. And at that time, you said, like, I don't know anything about the keto niche, but what I do know, because I've talked to people in the keto niche, is this, that, they want recipes. When you do this research, how does this dictate to you your messaging? Does this dictate your leads? Does this dictate your product? How does this research then manifest into the marketing and the product that you're creating?
Yeah, it's a great question. And to some people's surprise, it's not always that the exact details that you figure out makes it into the copy. A lot of the times it does, a lot of the times it does not. But what it does is it dictates everything about what you say. It dictates the words you use. It dictates the level of empathy that you put into your copy. It dictates even the tonality. Gary used to have this exercise where he would get people to write two letters. He would get them into a seminar and he would write two letters, and both of them were to your mom. One was this: you're a terrible human being. I hate you. I never want to see you again. Yada, yada, yada. And then the other one was, gosh, you mean the world to me. I love you so much. much. And like the energy that you put into copy, the language that you put into copy, the word selection that you put into copy, the tonality, the things you say, the talking points, the objections that you overcome and handle, the selling points that you make, all of this springs from this deep understanding of who you're talking to. And if you don't know who you're talking to, or you have this very vague understanding of who you're talking to, then rest assured the words you use, the tonality that you use, the promises that you make, the objections that you handle, they'll all just be 10 degrees off or more than that. They won't be bang on target. Like your copy should land like lightning in the hearts and minds of the people who are reading it. And it should move them emotionally. It really should like resonate with them. And it really should make people feel like this is for me. This is written for me. This person just crawled into my head, is talking to me on every level. I am exactly who this thing is for. And the more you can make your copy feel that way, the higher your conversions are going to be. And people use all of these tactics and strategies to try and keep readership and keep people watching the videos and all of that. But it all comes secondarily to being able to speak to someone in a manner that just completely attracts them to your copy like a magnet, because you're saying all of the things that are bang on target for who they are, their wants, needs, desires, fears, frustrations, and problems. So how does that translate? It translates in every conceivable way. Everything from what you say to how you say it, to the energy that you put into the copy, to the word selection, to the just everything you say springs from that depth of understanding, and not having it makes your copy infinitely weaker.
Yeah, and I think absolutely pivotal. Number one, the workshop exercise. Everybody should go ahead and set aside an hour or two to write their mother two letters, so that you can get into the habit of putting that energy and emotion into the copy, and being able to feel through the keyboard or feel through the pen, which would probably be more useful for you, because you handwrite with a pen with a different part of your brain than you type on the keyboard, and that you're able to feel that in a very new and different way. And then beyond that, really being able to, when you talk about how that copy changes the empathy, for instance, in the keto niche, if you're selling to gym bros versus women who are 70 or 100 pounds overweight, the objections, the triggers are going to be totally different. Now, you might not call them out. It's like, hey, are you 100 pounds overweight and afraid that you're going to lose your husband? It's probably
Yeah,
not the headline you would use. However, that understanding of who you're talking to is going to impact all the objections. It's going to impact all the copy, the promises, the outcomes. And you know what? It might actually resonate better with the gym bros than something that you wrote that you were trying to go back and forth or something. So it's absolutely a tremendous breakthrough. The last thing I wanted to mention is that what I have found over the last several months, this is April of 2025, almost May of 2025. And what I have found is that, particularly in B2B niches, there are very different conversations going on in companies today than were 6 or 8 months ago. And that this is research that you have to check in on an
yeah,
ongoing basis, and make some
great
calls
point.
and hear what's going on, that you could have and this is actually what I am seeing, and why people are coming to me, is that they had a offer that was crushing it in 2024, and they were doing gangbusters, doing well. And now all of a sudden they're seeing their subscriber churn rates overcome their subscriber acquisition rates, and they don't really know why. And of course, I do my thing and I figure out that the market's changed and we've got to tweak. And like, well, but this is the problem, is then it's like, oh, well, this is what's working. Like, no, this is what was working in 24. Remember, our conversion rates decline, our ad cost has gone up. This is not working anymore. Oh, It's so hard because they cling to this message, they cling to this headline because this is what's worked, and you got to help them through. And so I hope for some of our listeners, we're going to be able to help them look forward in their marketing versus going backwards to what worked in the past and projecting that into the future simply because that's what's worked in the past.
Absolutely. You've got to be keeping your finger on the pulse of where your customers and prospects are today with, particularly in times of change. Absolutely. You need to be constantly studying your competitors. Constantly. I'm a big advocate of, like, Gary Bencivenga had this profound lesson that stood to me over the years, and that is the ad a day diet. Read an ad every day. And I think it's absolutely profound. And if you're in the business of funnels, you should reverse engineer at least one funnel a week, and you should be looking at your competitors all the time. You've got to be keeping your finger on the pulse of, what your competitors are doing, what's working, what's not working, and keeping your finger on the pulse of where your customers are at, where your prospects are at.
And
It's
that's an
just
app.
critical.
And if anybody has any questions, because we covered a lot of
Stick them below.
territory here. Yeah, stick them in the comments because I think this is the best episode ever of the Monetizer show. And
Fabulous.
I'm telling you right now, Caleb, I am getting myself on the ad a day diet. This was a
Yeah.
habit that
Yeah.
I used to have, and I thought that I was above it probably 8 or 10 years ago,
Yeah.
and I
You're
and I
never
let
above
it
it.
I
Yeah.
let it subside. And I realize now in this moment, particularly after we've had this conversation, and then reminding me, I'm going to go back and build my little curriculum, have an inventory of Gary Halbert sales letters that I'm going to start with,
They're brilliant.
and start that process. Because even a couple of weeks ago, you and I we're sharing a Dan Kennedy
Yeah.
speaking presentation, and I spent 4 days going on that. You gave me a video sales letter that you created. I went for about 8 days just reading this one letter and tracking, all right, what did he say in this paragraph, and all right, what is he getting at, like, no, like diving into that. And because it helps, even if it's not related to your niche, understanding the triggers, understanding the emotional word pictures that's creating. It really helps you empathize with your niche. So
Yeah.
I'm on it. That's
The
that's
the
what I need
biggest
in my life.
the biggest advertising breakthroughs I ever had was pretty much, I can list about 12 of them, and they all came from studying outstanding advertising. Just seeing what someone was doing over there gave me an idea that I put on steroids, that I applied, and boom. I have so many examples of doing that. And, if you read a brilliant ad a day in 1 year, you'll take a minimum of one and probably two or three brilliant ideas from each ad. So if you do that every day for a year, you're pretty much one of the foremost experts on the planet when it comes to winning tactics that generate breakthrough advertising. It's a phenomenal thing. Pennsylvania should be awarded a medal or something for putting that out there. It's just genius. And the same can be applied to any industry at all. Um,
Absolutely. I'm gonna send him a note because I am jumping on that train. It's been far too long that I have been off the ad a day diet, and I'm gonna
Yeah.
jump on that.
Well, what's interesting is he does it and he's brilliant. Halbert used to do it. We used to go for breakfast and he would get the newspaper, and every single day he was ripping ads out of the newspapers that were repeatedly running. And, he was constantly talking to list brokers and getting the latest, greatest promotion that's popping off in a particular niche. And he was just always studying advertising.
This is really what makes it work, and what a fabulous episode of the Monetizer Show. Any questions? Drop them in the comments. We read every single one and reply. And one of our most viewed episodes was answers to your questions. So keep them coming.
We should do some more of them then.
We need to get back on it. But so
Yeah.
we will see you next time on the Monetizer Show. Thank you, Caleb.
Thank you, Rob. God bless.